Hello, everybody, and welcome back to What Does Jesus Teach? Today, we're going to be continuing in the study of pre-wrath versus pre-tribulation rapture doctrine, specifically today reviewing what pre-tribulation calls the Doctrine of Imminence. Now, the Doctrine of Imminence simply means that uh, after the day of Pentecost took place, Jesus could have returned at any moment from that point forward. No signs, no prophecies, or anything needs to take place before Jesus can return. Basically, as an example, he could have came back, you know, 3 years after he left. Now, in the part two of the series we just went through, that alone would refute this idea because Paul taught specifically and directly that certain things must happen first before the day of the rapture. He was very explicit about this. But let's review a few other areas in scriptures directly. Now, it's important to note that under pre tribulation doctrine, this is necessary because if signs are required, then it forces a believer to look for the signs that the scriptures describe. Any reference to the signs regarding the coming of Christ under pre tribulation doctrine is about his final return on the battle against the Antichrist and his army, or Battle of Armageddon. However, on the pre wrath doctrine, the signs before his arrival are for the rapture, not his final return to defeat the Antichrist. In short, if signs must first take place, it kind of destroys the pre tribulation doctrine. Now, here are just two of the scriptures, and these are the two main ones that I've found that pre tribulation believers point to as trying to show and prove that Jesus will return without any sign or pre requirement. Okay, so the first one I'll read it is 1 Thessalonians 5:2. It says, "For you yourselves know full well that the day of the Lord will come just like a thief in the night." Matthew 24:36. "But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father alone." Now, these two scriptures do indeed show that no one knows the day or the hour of when the Lord will return for the church. However, these scriptures do not indicate that there are no preceding signs. Prewrath agrees with no one knowing the day or the hour, but we can know the season or the general period of time without knowing the exact day or hour. Unfortunately, pre-tribulation reads into the scriptures that since we don't know the day or hour, that's supposed to automatically mean that there can be no sign or event that must take place beforehand. So let's test the theory of biblical standards on false prophecies. Again, that sort of conclusion that pre-tribulation draws is what I would call reading into the text or eisegesis. Since scripture does not say anything regarding the rapture being imminent since the day of Pentecost. Pre-wrath teaches that the rapture is imminent after the Antichrist is revealed, but not before that point. Okay. One additional thing to note, which I think is really it's quite humorous actually, is that while many pre-tribulation believers quote Matthew 24:36 to somehow prove imminence, they do so using a scripture that they themselves use to say has to do with the final return of Jesus. Chapter 24 as a whole, by pre tribulation, is looked at as not referring to the rapture at all. But for some reason, verse 36 is somehow pulled out by itself as a way to prove that the rapture is imminent. But they don't believe that entire chapter is about the rapture at all. Very strange. Okay, I'll try to skim through this a little quickly. It's what I call a false prophet identification. Here, let's go ahead and take a look at Deuteronomy 18:22. It says, "When a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, if the thing does not come about or come true, that is a thing which the Lord has not spoken. The prophet has spoken it presumptuously, you shall not be afraid of him." Okay. In summary, basically, if a prophecy doesn't come true, then the person who provided the prophecy is giving you a false prophecy, and by extension, could also be a way to identify a false prophet. Therefore, any word in Scripture that speaks as things that to come true must come true, or the source of that prophetic word becomes false. Certainly, like a prophecy. I'll give you an example. Matthew 23:38 to 39. It shows Jesus telling that Israel will become desolate. This means that this particular prophecy from Jesus had to come true before his return. Thus, this did not take place until 70 AD, 40 or so years after Jesus left. It could also refer to the desolation taking place during the 7 year period of the end times. Therefore, if Jesus returned before this event, his own prophecy will be false. Now, if we hold to the point of 70 AD, Jesus said this is going to happen. He can't return before it happens because if he did, then the prophecy wouldn't come true. He would then by default be given a false prophecy. And Jesus, we know, gives no false prophecies. Luke 21:6, pretty much point to the same thing. John 21:18 through 29 shows Jesus sharing how Peter would be killed and that he would die as an old man. Imminence then will not be possible because Peter needed to become an old man and die. If Jesus returned prior to this happening, then Peter would have gone up in the rapture, and his prophecy about Peter dying old wouldn't come true. Okay. In Acts 21, towards the end of the book of Acts, an angel revealed to Paul that he had to stand before Caesar. So this angel prophetically told Paul that this needed to happen. It would then, of course, be a false prophetic word to give Paul if the rapture could have taken place before those events took place. Revelation 10:11, shows John was instructed that he must prophesy again to the nations. Again, if it was imminent, then John could not be given a command that must be fulfilled first. Again, these are just a few scriptural prophetic words that show up in the Bible that show that the return of Jesus could not have happened at any moment, especially when there are prophetic words that must take place first. In particular, 2 Thessalonians 2 gives the last things that must take place before the rapture can occur. But all in all, imagine, just picture for a second. Jesus said, and I'll use the one for Peter because it's the simplest. Peter, you're going to die an old man. Okay, I don't know how old Peter was, but let's just say he was 30 years old, maybe 40. Well, to be considered an old man, you have to be a lot more advanced in age. Definitely more than a day from now. So let's just say Peter was 40 and he dies as an old man. So let's give him, 70 years old. That's still 30 years that Peter had to live before he became old and was killed on a cross. If Jesus would have came back before then his prophecy would be untrue. Imagine the horror from people seeing if Peter would have died young. Wait a minute, didn't Jesus say that he was going to die an old man? That would have already created a contradiction in Scripture. Hmm. No, that cannot be so. Jesus does not give false prophecies. So, another thing that comes up a lot from pre-tribulationists is that, it's not necessarily biblical necessarily, but oftentimes they'll say something like, you know, oh, we know that the end times are near. We're definitely in the end times because, or that the rapture is certainly near now because this or that is happening. For example, we know there's people being beheaded in different countries. There's a lot of you know earthquakes. There's a lot of crime. The world's getting crazy. With the LGBTQ. Whatever letters you want to add to it. Uh, all these things are going on. And people say, "Oh, it's a sign of the end times." The return of Jesus must come close because of how crazy it's getting. But what's really weird is that when people say that and they say they believe in pre-tribulation, they're admitting that they don't believe in pre-tribulation rapture because pre-tribulation rapture doctrine includes the doctrine of imminence. Therefore, if you're saying that because of the way the world is being right now, that somehow tells you a sign that the end is coming, then you're pointing at a sign to tell you that the return of Jesus is coming close, which means then you believe that a sign is necessary before Jesus returns. Otherwise, the state of the world would have no indication as to when Jesus is going to return. See, it's funny, pre-tribulation says you don't need a sign, but they point to a sign to say that Jesus is coming soon. See, it's a twisted circle. It doesn't make sense, and it's very contradictory. Okay, this video was a little short, but I wanted to kind of really stop and talk about the doctrine of imminence. Again, it just isn't true. There's just no way. Again, with Scripture alone, there's too many things that Scripture said was going to happen before. So an early church member would not have ever thought that the return of Jesus could have happened at any second if he was made aware of the words of Jesus or the things that were in the New Testament. Obviously, they did not have a physical book to look at like we do, but it just shows that during that period of time in the New Testament, Jesus could not have returned because these things had to happen first. So, with that being said, I pray that you pray about this. Again, if you have any questions, put it in the comments. I'll try to answer them as best as I can. But with that being said, God bless you. May God's grace be with you.